All right, so good afternoon, everyone. So for today, let's go ahead and discuss this third part of, or the third module here in Empowerment Technologies, which is the Internet. By the way, we have two different parts dito sa module number 3 natin. So for the first part, we will be discussing the Internet. And for the second part, we will be discussing the different basic PC components. Okay, and after this discussion, you will be able to at least define some internet terminologies, and at the same time, at least magkakaroon kayo ng idea how the web or the internet evolved from the very basic up to the future na magkakaroon tayo. And also, we will be differentiating the internet from the web. So let's talk about the word internet. Kasi once we say internet, it's actually a combination of two different words, which are the word interconnected networks. Now, when we say interconnected networks, okay, these are just simply a worldwide collection of networks that links millions of business, government, agencies, educational institutions, and individuals. Kaya nga tinawag natin na internet or interconnected networks. And when we say networks, those are just simply computers that are connected to one another. Now, internet also is a global wide area network that connects all computer systems across the world. And with the definition of the internet, there are some definition of terms that you have to at least be familiar with. Number one is what we call the ISP or Internet Service Provider na tinatawag natin. Now, when we say ISP or the Internet Service Provider, those are actually a business or organization that provides access to the internet either for a free or for fee. Now, when we say ISP, if someone asks you, what's your ISP? You can just simply answer, ang ISP ko is Smart, PLDT, Globe, Sky Cable, Converge, yan, Dito, and many more. So, okay, so yun yung tinatawag natin na ISP. Now, regarding with the ISP, they actually provide internet services with a specific bandwidth na tinatawag natin. Now, when we say bandwidth, these are the amount of data that travels over a network. Now, in layman's term, bandwidth are simply the speed of your internet. And you can actually measure the speed of the internet yan, via kbps or mbps. Now, using your browser like Google Chrome or your Safari sa iOS and other search engine na meron kayo, I want you guys to go to this website and let's try to check and see kung ano nga ba ang bandwidth na meron kayo. So, just simply type fast.com for you to able to see the internet speed na meron kayo. So, in your case, in my case, we will all have different internet speed. So, as of the moment, my internet speed is around, it's still loading. Yan, kung nakikita ninyo. So, medyo mabilis, di ba? So, sa case ko, medyo mabilis. Uh, and I'm using PLDT. So that will now depend on your case. So in my case, I have here a total of 200 megabytes per second. So that means every second there are 200 megabytes of data that are being transferred from the ISP directly to my computer, which is, of course, kaya nga tinawag natin na internet. So I want you guys to at least check your internet speed and let's see kung ilan nga ba yung internet speed na meron kayo. So at least para maging aware kayo if you are really paying the internet service na binili ninyo. Diba? So for example, you have subscribed with PLDT 1299 which is around 10 Mbps. So tignan nyo kung 10 Mbps nga ba talaga yung binabayaran ninyong internet or nakukuha ninyong internet speed or bandwidth sa internet ninyo. Okay? So that's simply the concept of bandwidth. Basically, it's just simply the speed of your internet. Okay? Next, we have here what we call IP address. Lagi ninyo naririnig to, di ba? IP address simply stands for Internet Protocol Address, and these are just simply a sequence of numbers that uniquely identifies each device connected to the internet. And for your information, each devices that we have here, from your smartphone, from your computer, to other gadgets na meron kayo, those devices, meron po siyang corresponding IP address. And each IP address, okay, will actually determine especially your location and at the same time kung anong ISP meron kayo. So, you can actually go to this website in Google, what is my IP address? Yan. So, in my case, kapag ka-clinic ko tong what is my IP address, it will now provide me the IP address which is ito, itong 112.206.103.54 and I'm using Philippine long distance telephone. Yan. So, nakalagay lang dito Taguig in Metro Manila. It's actually because I'm using a certain, VPN or private protocol network in which hides my real IP address. Kasi medyo praning ako eh. Hindi ko alam kung bakit. Kasi if you are hacker or if you know how to at least navigate the internet, for as long as you know the IP address of your victim, you can already do something sa loob ng computer niya. You can either connect to that computer and you can even control that computer. So, yan. So, in your case, magkakaiba tayo ng IP address and these are unique Internet Protocol address. So, kung gusto nyong ma-access tong computer ko, just simply use my IP address using a certain tool na gagamitin ninyo para ma-access tong computer ko. And you can now browse anything inside my PC. Ganon din ako sa inyo. Once na nalaman ko yung totoong IP address ninyo, yan, I can do anything I want. Especially, yan, remote access na tinatawag natin. So, that's Internet Protocol address. We have here what we call domain name. Now, when we say domain name, this is actually a text-based name that corresponds to the IP address. So you have the IP address of a certain website, say for example. Now, from that IP address, it will now translate to what we call domain name. And from the domain name, okay, we have here what we call the domain name system. It translates that particular domain name into its associated IP address. Now, for you to able to see the IP address, say for example, of a specific website, say Facebook. So either you can search Google or you can just simply type here in using your command prompt, ping facebook.com. So makikita nyo dito kung ano yung IP address na meron ang facebook.com. So nakikita nyo, this is actually an example of an IP address pero IPv6 is ito kasi eh. Diba? So, pwede nyo ring tignan sa google.com, say for example. Ayan. So, ayun siya. So, makikita ninyo na pwede nyong makita ang IP address ng isang website. Or, you can just simply search what is the IP address of Facebook. Kasi kagabi, ewan ko, di ba, kung napansin nyo, nag-down ang Facebook. Diba? So, nag-down ang Facebook kahapon and there are a lot of users out there na nagrereklamo, hindi ma-message yung mga jowa nila kasi nga, nag-down ang Facebook. So, these are just simply the most common active IP address for facebook.com. So, try natin kapag kinopy ko yan and I tried pasting that directly in my browser, tignan natin kung magpapakita yan. So far hindi. So may mga IP address ang Facebook na hindi nag-work. Yan. Pero tingnan natin kapag Google. What is the IP address of google.com? And let's see. Okay. The Google public DNS IP address are the following or itong IPv6 na to. So pwede natin gamitin itong IPv6 or itong IP address protocol number 4 natin. So, hindi siya ngayon nung nag-work. Pero usually, kapag tinype nyo yan dito, directly to your address bar, automatic yan pupunta sa google.com. Yan, dyan siya magpapakita sa google.com. So, that's actually an example of how you will use IP address in something else. So, pwede nyong i-search ang IP address ng isang specific website out here and pwede nyo siyang gamitin para i-type dito directly sa address bar ninyo. Okay? Now, since we have defined the following terms, again, internet are simply a combination of two different words, interconnected networks. That simply means it's a connection of different networks all around the world. And in order for you to be connected to the internet, there are two different connection types that we have to be familiar with. Number one is what we call the wired connection, and number two is what we call the wireless connection. Now, when we say wired connection, of course, obviously, it implies that you have to be physically connected to the internet, or your device should be physically connected to a specific device as well para makakonect ka sa internet. While wireless, meaning it doesn't have any wires. Now, what are those examples of wired connection? And let's try to compare them to those counterparts ng wireless. We have here cable internet service, wired connection yan. Ibig sabihin, your television or your device, especially your computer, will now be directly connected to an internet cable na tinatawag natin. Dito sa Baguio, meron tayong tinatawag na yung mga sky cable in which magkakaroon kayo ng cable sa TV and at the same time, magkakaroon din kayo ng internet service. Diba? So, the counterpart of that one is what we call the Wi-Fi or what we call the wireless fidelity. So, I have here a question from Miss Gloria Macapagal. So, if I relocate or move from my location, mag-change din po ba ang location ko for my IP address? Definitely. So, going back to the topic ng IP address kanina, yes, every time na nag-relocate ka ng connection mo, say for example, you're from Luwakan, yan, o tapos mag-relocate ka somewhere to Irisan, for example, automatic, your IP address will also change as well. Kasi, yung ginagamit nila, especially yung mga technician natin, hindi siya, kumbaga, hindi pare-pareho. It's always unique. So, kung nakikita nyo yung mga poste na katabi natin, na pinagkokonekan ng mga technician natin ng PLDT, yung mga ganyan, those particular posts have what we call unique IP addresses na naka-allocate na rin. So, kapag ka lumipat ka, definitely unique din ang IP address mo. Okay? So, ewan ko kung bakit na-curious si Miss Makapagal. Pero, yeah, it will always provide us a unique IP address kahit nasa ang location ka. Okay? So, going back to the wired connection type here, another wired connection type is what we call the DSL. Ito yung mga old type ng connection natin, DSL, Digital Subscriber Line. Yung may mga telephone, di ba? So, the counterpart for wireless is actually the mobile broadband. Ito yung ginagamit natin nowadays, yung mga data na meron tayo. Ayan. Using SIM card lang. Another example here of wired connection, dial-up. Pero hindi na masyadong ginagamit ang dial-up eh. Ano nga bang itsura ng dial-up internet? So, tignan natin. Let's simply search Google and let's try to be familiar with dial-up. So, ganyan lang po ang dial-up internet connection. So, para lang siyang router or modem na kagaya ng meron tayo ngayon. Pero, this is actually an old type connection of internet. And this is very slow. So, tingnan natin kung ilan nga ba ang speed, average speed of dial-up internet. So, usually, the dial-up internet is around 56 kilobytes per second. Pansin nyo? Sobrang bagal ng dial-up internet connection. Kapag DSL naman, kapag Digital Subscriber Line, usually, ayan, the typical speed for a DSL connection is 6 Mbps. And right now, here in the Philippines, may mga gumagamit pa rin ng DSL connection. Pero, ang pinaka-sikat ngayon is actually the fiber optics na meron tayo. Ibig sabihin ng fiber optics, let's try to at least see what is a fiber optic internet. Literally, sa loob po ng cables, yan, gumagamit na ngayon ng mga fiber optics. The reason behind this, it's actually because the data transfer is faster comparing to those DSL, yan, and dial-up internet connection. Ito kasi, kapag mga fiber, mas mabilis ang pag-transfer ng data over the internet. So, usually, the speed of the fiber optic is around, 940 megabits per second. Pero sa ibang bansa yan. Pero dito sa Philippines, expect nyo around 100. Okay? 100. And, kagaya nga ng discussion natin from the last week, which is actually the introduction to 5G networks. Yan. 5G networks, dito na rin yan papasok sa mga fiber optics. So, little by little, this country is trying to shift from DSL or yung mga telephone services into a fiber optic type ng internet connection kasi nga mas efficient and mas mabilis. And imagine kung naka 100 or 900 megabytes per second kayo, ang sarap maglaro at ang sarap mag-download ng mga games and movies and series, 'di ba? Sa websites na favorite natin. Yan. So, yun yung mga wireless connection. Another here is what we call local area network. Kapag local area network naman, nakadepende yan kung saang local area ang network na meron ka. See, for example, computer shop. So, a computer shop uses a local area network type of internet connection. It's still, uh, what do you call this? It still uses some certain type of internet connection like DSL and fiber optics. Pero, using a particular router or modem, yan, ko-connect niya lahat yun directly doon sa mga computers na meron sa computer shop. Same goes true inside the laboratory or computer laboratory sa mga schools like in UC. Yan, gumagamit din sila ng local area network. Now, kapag wireless area network naman, from the word wireless, meaning, yan, everything is connected to the internet wirelessly. Say for example, meron tayong tinatawag na mga smart cities. So, smart city, ibig sabihin, meron kang specific na Wi-Fi spot. Tapos lahat ng tao pwedeng connect directly doon sa Wi-Fi spot na yon. So, yun yung mga yon. Meron pa ditong hindi nabanggit, yung MAN, Metropolitan Area Network. It's almost the same with wireless area network. However, the scope of that is way bigger and larger. Yan. So, moving on, meron din tayong tinatawag na coaxial or coaxial cable. Tinatawag natin. Ano nga ba ang itsura ng coaxial cable? Para at least makita natin. Yan. So, para siyang fiber optic, pero mas advanced ng konti. Yan. So, mas advanced siya. Ang fiber optic kasi sobrang nipis eh. Ang coaxial naman, ayan. So, ganyan po ang itsura. Diba? Ito. Yung part na yan. So, it's faster than it's faster than the DSL and at the same time dial up naman. Okay, and its counterpart is so far the fastest, which is a satellite internet service. So imagine you are getting your internet directly sa satellite internet. Now, maybe some of you will ask, Sir, paano po ba nag-start ang internet and saan nag-start ang internet? That's actually a separate topic for everyone kasi the history of the internet is very, very, what you call this one, very long and aabutin tayo ng hindi lang isang meeting para i-discuss yun. Pero it was a big deal way back like around 1970s. Ang pinakauna nilang uh, activity over the internet is just simply sending a simple hello world message to a computer to another computer. And that time, it was very big deal. So kung gusto niyo mapanood yung documentary na yun, meron po tayo sa YouTube para mapanood ninyo yung internet or the history of the internet. Okay? Pero yun nga, sobrang haba nun. Discuss na natin siguro next time. So moving on, since we are talking about internet, meron din tayong tinatawag dito na triple W or the World Wide Web. So when we say World Wide Web, it is an information space where documents and other web resources are located. And it is considered as the biggest example of the internet. Kasi, of course, kapag nagbabrowse ka ng internet, you are actually using those websites na tinatawag natin. Diba? And in order for you to visit those websites, you have to be connected you have to be connected directly to the World Wide Web na tinatawag natin. Now, before natin nagamit tong internet or web na meron tayo ngayon, the World Wide Web evolved from a simplest type of websites up to the most advanced na meron tayo. So let's talk about the evolution of the World Wide Web. So, meron tayong tinatawag dito na Web 1.0. That's the very first evolution of World Wide Web. And usually it happened like way back 1994 up to the year 2000. And when we say Web 1.0, it refers to the word readable Yan, static web, read-only web. Bakit nga ba? Because, you know, as the name implies, literally, ang makikita nyo dati sa website are just simply a series of text, a wall of texts. Yan, yan. So, walang masyadong interaction or it's very limited, meaning you cannot send any message. All you have to do is to simply read those information. So, it's all about what we call online viability. So, it's all about the information. You don't really care about how you interact. Yan. You don't really care about how you send message or, other things. Ang gusto mo lang mangyari, static. You are just simply reading. Kaya nga Web 1.0. Now, those examples there are the old Wikipedia. Yan. The very old Wikipedia. Kumbaga, wall of text lang siya. Very limited images and multimedia elements. And of course, the first Netscape Navigator. Now, from the Web 1.0, it evolved, okay, into what we call now a writable phase of the web, in which it happened way back year 2000 and 2010. So ito, naabutan ko pa to eh. Uh, this is actually the part where this time it's what we call social web. Aside from its readable or readability function, you can now also edit or you can now uh, also try to put something sa internet as well. Kaya nga read-write web na tinatawag natin. And it's dynamic, meaning it's changing and it allows interaction between the sites and users. So this time, meron na yung chat features. Yan. The power of social networks, dito rin nag-start. Yung Friendster, MySpace, yung mga yan, the classic Facebook. So it started from this part or evolution of web. So meron din, yan, it encourages user-generated contents. Yan, kagaya nito. Also, yan, the examples are the social media sites, as I have said, and image and video sharing sites. YouTube is one example here before. Kasi meron ng YouTube dati, pero very limited lang ang pwede mong magawa sa YouTube dati. So, pero basically, you can now watch some YouTube videos from or all around the world. And also, the birth of blogging sites in mga blogger.com, dito rin nag-start yan. So, Web 2.0. So, again, Web 2.0 is the writable phase. Web 1.0 is the readable phase. So, it evolved from writable into what we call executable phase, which is the Web 3.0. Now, when we say executable phase of the web, which happened way back 2010 and last year, which is 2020, this is now what we call the semantic web. So, the semantic web introduces the concept of databases and it was driven by technological changes. So, when we say driven by technological changes, meaning in terms of the scripting language na ginagamit, dito kasi more on HTML lang. So, hypertext markup language. Dito, it uses now what we call the CSS or the cascading style sheets. Nagkaroon na ng mga design, nagkaroon na ng mga uh, yan, chat features and so on. Dito sa executable phase naman or the semantic web, it uses some more scripting language and programming language to be added directly to the websites. And sabi ko nga, this is actually the birth of databases. Kasi lahat na ng ginagawa mo, okay, lahat na ng ginagawa mo sa websites are actually being saved in what we call cookies. And those cookies right now will now be used later on sa or para mapa-improve yung user experience mo. And it's because of this phase or evolution of the web, nandito na tayo ngayon sa Web 4.0, which is actually what we call the self-learning web. Now, uh, year 2020 and year 2030. So kung napansin nyo ngayon, hindi ko alam kung aware kayo, pero every time you are trying to search something over the internet, hindi nyo ba napapansin na parang aware si internet sa isa-search ninyo? So for example, sa Lazada or sa Shopee. Lazada and Shopee uses those cookies na ginamit before sa Web 3.0 and it collected data from you to determine kung ano nga ba yung mga hilig mo na products. And depending on your searches, will now be the recommendation page na lalabas sa Lazada and Shopee mo. So kung halimbawa you love searching about, apparels, like damit, yung mga ganyan, pantalon, polo, and so on. So automatic, Lazada and Shopee or other websites out there will now feed feed you with those kinds of, things na meron ka. Kaya nga, sabi nga nila, mapapansin mo ang personality din ng isang tao sa recommendation page na makikita mo sa social media accounts niya. Say, for example, sa Facebook. So, kung ang nakikita nyong recommendation niya sa Facebook are somewhat related to, to memes, automatic, that person loves to browse memes. Like in my case, my Facebook account, puro gaming, kasi nga, mahilig akong maglaro. Something like that. So, napansin nyo, it's the year 2021 and nag-start na po yung tinatawag natin na intelligent web. Alam ng website kung ano yung ginagawa natin. Even sa YouTube, alam yung mga i-recommend na bagay sa atin. Diba? So, it's self-learning web. It focuses on user and the subject domain and the level of knowledge ng user na meron. So, kung napansin nyo, from a very static type of website, yan, naging readable or naging writable, and nag-evolve siya into a semantic web which uses the database and cookies. And right now, sa age na meron tayo is a self-learning web. So maybe you're wondering ano nga ba yung susunod yan. That's the what we call uh, telepathic web, which is will happen in the year 2030 and beyond. So sa sobrang talino na ng internet for websites, okay, this time the brain implants will be very popular. So automatic, nag-iisip ka lang, iisipin mo pa lang, alam na ng internet kung ano yung ibabato mo or ano yung isa-search mo. So the appearance of microchip will now be very prominent and it will be implanted either directly sa brain natin or sa hand natin. So yes, I think this will be inevitable and mangyayari po 'yan little by little. Yan nga, nag-umpisa na nga, di ba? Nag-uumpisa na sa ibang bansa. Well, I will not talk about that, pero you know what I mean. We have different kinds of, what do you call this one, expectations on this one. Some of you will try to use the, you know, what do you call this one? Yan yung related sa Bible. So, I think, yun nga, this is inevitable and it might happen anytime soon. So, nakalagay dito 2030 and beyond. So, imagine yourself using the internet pero hindi mo na kailangan gumamit ng mga peripheral devices like mouse and keyboard. All you have to do is you simply think and that's it. Di ba? So, those are simply the evolution of World Wide Web. Now, uh, let's talk about other terms here na meron tayo. Okay. So, we have here uh, an example of a URL na tinatawag natin. Universal yan, Resource Locator na tinatawag natin. So, this is actually an example of URL and each URL has its parts. So, number one, we have here the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is a method being used to transfer information on the web. We have here the triple W, yan, yung diniscuss natin ngayon lang, the www, okay, which is actually determines the web if the website is available in the World Wide Web. Now, aside from HTTP, we have here what we call the HTTPS. Nakikita natin yan. Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secured, in short. So, ibig sabihin, you are now browsing that particular website in a more secure way. So, it uses certain cookies to secure your searches and so on. So, usually, it's used when authenticating data like yung mga websites ng online banking. So, they use Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. Yan, para mas maging secure yung pagbabrowse mo doon sa mga online banking. So, this is an example or an illustrations between HTTP and HTTPS. So, for example, you are browsing that website and you have placed your password. Yan. Automatic, pag HTTPS is na. Kapag ka HTTPS naman, that particular password will now be encrypted into something. And the hacker will now see the encrypted version of that password na tinype mo. So, that's how simple the difference between HTTP and HTTPS. Very simple. We have here what we call the host name. Yan. The host name, ito, yung example, or in this case, Facebook, for example. Yan. It labels or it identifies a device, also known as domain name. We have the uniform resource locator, the entire web address. And lastly, we have what we called the top level domain. Ito to, TLD na tinatawag natin. What is the meaning of top level domain? TLD is actually the last segment, and usually those top level domain means something depende sa intended purpose ng website na yon. So usually ang common na nakikita natin are the .com, meaning it's for commercial organization, business and companies like facebook.com, instagram.com, youtube.com, shopee.com. Actually shopee.ph to eh. So doon siya mapupunta sa PH or countries intended purpose. .edu, educational institutions like our beloved UC website. Yan. We also have government agencies like .gov and military organizations like this website, .mil, network providers, .net, .org, non-profit organizations, and many more. Meron pa tayong .ph, di ba? So, .philippines, sabihin, yan, domain niya na nakalagay dito sa Pilipinas. Meron pa tayong marami pa tayong mga top level domain na pwedeng banggitin. Diba? So, those are just simply the other terms na kailangan nating makita, especially dito sa URL na natin na tinatawag. Next part, medyo malapit na tayong matapos, is now what we call the search engine. Another term here, when we say search engine, okay, from the word itself, it finds sites, web pages, images, and other information related to a specific topic. So that's search engines. So for example, google.com. Ang Google, iba yun ha. Pero google.com is search engine. Ang Google Chrome, iba yun. So bing.com, search, yahoo.com, and so on. Pag sinabi naman nating internet browser, it's the application software that is used to access the web, like ito, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Microsoft Edge, and so on. And lastly, we have what we call the subject directory. When we say subject directory, it classifies web pages in an organized set of categories. Natin. So that's actually the end of your first part of the module. Now, on this part, yung module 3B natin, next meeting natin i-discuss. Pero for your additional video links, you can just simply click on the following, especially how does the internet works, para papanood nyo to. Yan. And you are now allowed to answer the written assessment we have placed doon sa Canvas accounts ninyo. So, pwede nyo na pong sagutan yung written assessment. Now, let me explain the written assessment here. The odd one out. So, for the odd one out, all you have to do is to simply analyze the given words. Yan. And just simply choose the word here that doesn't belong to the group. Say, for example, ito is the deep web, dynamic web, intelligent web, static web. Nabanggit ko yan lahat except for a simple word yan. So, pipiliin nyo dito kung ano dyan yung hindi ko nabanggit and so on. So, this is 10 items and 1 point each. So, wala talaga siyang instruction dito kasi ang instruction nandito na po. Okay? So, you can now answer this para, yan, kaya nyo answeran niya within 15 minutes. So, for the multiple choice, ganun din. It's very easy. Yan, so 10 items and 10 points po. So, do you have any questions so far? Wala naman.